My mom demanded I choose between my real sister and my stepsister, and when I did, it blew up our family. My mom and her husband Johnny have tried to create a blended family, but we're not a family, and we're not blended in any kind of way. There's me, 16, and my sister, 13, and my stepsister, 13, and then Mom and Johnny. 10 years ago, we lost our dad, and 7 years ago, Johnny and his ex got divorced after she left him and my stepsister 9 years ago. My stepsister hasn't seen or heard from her mom since she left. I heard Johnny say before that his ex didn't even show up to most of the divorce hearings. Anyway, my mom and Johnny met through parents' conferences at my sister and stepsister's school. The two of them knew each other and avoided each other because they didn't like each other. My mom and Johnny had no idea until they'd been dating for 8 months and introduced us all. My sister and stepsister refused to talk that whole first meeting. That was 5 years ago, and each time while my mom and Johnny were dating, the same thing happened. But they decided to get married anyway, and they brought us to family therapy. The girls said they wouldn't be sisters with each other and they wouldn't be friends either. We went for over a year with some of it happening over Zoom because of the pandemic. Family therapy stopped for a while, and then my mom found another therapist for us. After 5 months of going, my stepsister admitted she'd like an older brother and would like for us to be closer, but she still wanted nothing to do with my sister, and my sister felt the same. My mom encouraged me to spend less time with my sister and focus on my stepsister more. She was always in my ear telling me I could make such a huge difference in her life and how every little girl deserved an older sibling who looked out for them and loved them. Stuff with my sister and stepsister got worse. They had this really big fight the other week, and my mom said to me at the time that I need to pick a side in it because doing so will help the other understand how wrong they are. She also said it's about loyalty, etc. I ignored her, but she said it twice more before she brought it up for the last time the other night, and I told her I side with my sister. She was like, "What do you mean?" And she said that wasn't what I was supposed to say. I told her she told me to pick a side, and I will always take my sister's side because I love her. She said it sounds an awful lot like I don't love my stepsister, and I said, that should come as no surprise. She told me I shouldn't pick my sister just because she's blood-related, and I told her the loyalty stuff she talked about. None is with my stepsister, and all of it is with my sister. Mom told Johnny, and the two of them are pissed I took this stance. Aita? Update 1. All right. So after everything went down, my mom was still mad at me for taking my sister's side, and Johnny was all huffy about it too. They wouldn't drop it. It's like they thought if they kept pushing, I'd magically wake up one day and be like, "Oh, you're right, let me suddenly love my stepsister the same way I love my actual sister." Spoiler alert, that didn't happen. A couple of days after our argument, my mom calls a family meeting. These are usually just her and Johnny sitting us all down to lecture us about how we're not acting like a real family. My sister and I already knew it was going to be some kind of guilt trip, so we were not looking forward to it. My stepsister didn't seem excited either. Probably because these meetings always end with her being upset too. So we all sit in the living room, and my mom starts by saying, "We need to talk about how we treat each other in this house." Johnny jumps in, acting all serious, saying stuff like, "We can't keep living like this. We're supposed to be a team, a family." Then my mom turns to me and says, "You're the oldest, and you set the tone for how this family works." I knew where this was going, so I just said, "If this is about me picking a side, I already explained myself." My mom goes, "It's not about picking sides. It's about showing love and loyalty to everyone in this house equally." I told her, "That's not how loyalty works for me. I'm not going to act like my sister and stepsister are interchangeable because they're not." That's when Johnny said something that made me lose it. He goes, "Maybe you need to think about what your dad would have wanted." I froze for a second because, seriously? Bringing up my dad like that felt like crossing a line. My sister looked just as shocked as I felt. I asked him, "What do you mean by that?" And he said, "Your dad would have wanted you to bring this family together, not tear it apart." That hit a nerve. I told him, "You don't get to speak for my dad. You didn't even know him." My mom tried to interrupt, but I wasn't done. I told them both that using my dad to guilt me into being a better sibling to my stepsister was messed up. I said, "If you think throwing my dad's name around is going to make me forget how you've been treating me and my sister, it's not." Johnny got defensive and said I was twisting his words. My mom looked like she wanted to cry, but honestly, I didn't feel bad. It felt like they were trying to manipulate me, and I wasn't going to just sit there and take it. After that, my sister stood up and said, "I'm done with this conversation," and walked out. I followed her because, honestly, what else was there to say? My stepsister stayed behind with my mom and Johnny, and I could hear her crying. That part made me feel bad because I don't hate my stepsister. I just don't have the same connection with her, and I can't force one to exist. Later that night, my mom came to my room. She looked tired, like she'd been crying too. She said, "I'm trying so hard to make this family work, but it feels like you don't even care." I told her, "I care about you, and I care about my sister, but you can't force us to be something we're not." She said, "You're not even trying," and left before I could respond. The next few days were super tense. My sister and I mostly stayed in our rooms, and my mom was giving us the cold shoulder. Johnny barely talked to us except to say stuff like, "Dinner's ready," and even then he sounded annoyed. My stepsister was quiet too, which made me feel even worse. Then, out of nowhere, my mom said she scheduled another family therapy session. She didn't ask if we wanted to go, she just announced it like it was happening whether we liked it or not. My sister rolled her eyes and said, "What's the point? We've been to therapy before and it didn't fix anything." My mom just said, "This time will be different." We went to the session, and it was just as awkward as I expected. The therapist asked us to talk about how we feel about the family dynamic. My sister was honest and said she didn't feel like we were a real family and didn't think we ever would be. My stepsister said she wanted us to be closer, but didn't know how to make that happen. When it was my turn, I said I felt like I was being forced to choose between my sister and my stepsister, and that wasn't fair to anyone. The therapist asked my mom and Johnny how they felt. My mom said she felt heartbroken that we weren't all getting along and blamed herself for not doing more to make things work. Johnny said he felt disrespected and like we weren't giving him or my stepsister a fair chance. By the end of the session, nothing really felt resolved. The therapist suggested we all try to spend more time together as a family, but my sister and I weren't exactly thrilled about that idea. My mom and Johnny seemed hopeful, though, so I guess we'll see how that goes. Here's where the twist comes in. A few days after the therapy session, my stepsister came to my room. She looked nervous, like she didn't know if she should even be there. She said, "Can I talk to you?" I said sure, and she sat down on the edge of my bed. She told me she overheard Johnny and my mom talking the other night. Apparently, Johnny said something about how he didn't really believe we'd ever be a real family but thought it was worth trying for her sake. My stepsister said it hurt to hear that because she thought Johnny was fully on board with the whole blended family thing. She said, "If even he doesn't believe it, then what's the point?" I didn't know what to say at first. I told her, "I don't think it's about whether we're a real family or not. It's about whether we can at least be honest with each other." She nodded and said, "I just wish things were easier." That conversation stuck with me. It made me realize my stepsister wasn't as clueless about all this as I thought. She's just stuck in the middle, like the rest of us. I don't know if it changes how I feel about everything, but it did make me think about her differently. Now I'm stuck wondering if there's a way to make this work without pretending we're something we're not. I still don't think I'll ever see my stepsister the same way I see my sister, but maybe that's okay. Maybe it's enough to just try to understand each other, even if we don't have the perfect sibling bond my mom and Johnny want. Update 2. After my stepsister came to my room and we had that talk, things started to feel different. Not better, not worse, just different. I didn't suddenly feel this deep sibling connection with her, but it felt like I finally saw her as her own person and not just part of the problem my mom and Johnny were always throwing at me. She wasn't the one forcing us to be a family. She was just trying to survive in this mess, same as me and my sister. But before I could even process all that, my mom decided it was time for us to do a family activity. She announced at breakfast that we were all going to go to a ropes course. Yeah, because nothing says bonding like being stuck on a wobbly bridge with the people you've been fighting with for years. My sister was immediately like, "Do we have to?" And Johnny hit us with the classic, "This isn't optional." Fast forward to the day of the ropes course, and it was exactly as awkward as I thought it'd be. My mom and Johnny were all smiles, trying to hype it up like this was going to be the thing that finally brought us together. My sister and I were just counting down the hours until we could go home, and my stepsister was quiet, like she wasn't sure how to act around us after our conversation. The instructor started us off with some team-building exercises. You know, the kind where you have to guide someone blindfolded or work together to solve some puzzle. It was a disaster. My mom kept trying to take charge, which only made my sister more stubborn. Johnny got frustrated when nobody listened to him, and my stepsister and I mostly stayed out of it because it felt pointless. At one point, my sister straight up said, "This isn't going to make us a family, so why are we even here?" My mom looked like she was about to cry, and Johnny muttered something about how this is exactly the attitude that's the problem. The real chaos started when we got to the actual ropes course. It was one of those high-up ones where you're strapped into a harness, and you have to climb across all these obstacles. My stepsister went first, and she was actually pretty good at it. Then my sister went, and she was okay too, but she complained the whole time about how dumb it was. I went next and managed not to embarrass myself, which was honestly my only goal. Then it was my mom's turn. She's not exactly athletic, so it didn't go well. She got halfway across one of the bridges before she froze. She started panicking and yelling for Johnny to help her, even though he was still on the ground. The instructor tried to talk her through it, but she wasn't having it. She ended up clinging to the ropes and refusing to move until they brought a ladder to get her down. After that, Johnny refused to even try the course. He said something about how this family doesn't need any more disasters, which felt like a jab at my mom, but also at all of us. My sister and I exchanged a look that basically said, yeah, this was a waste of time. On the ride home, nobody talked. The silence was so heavy it felt like we were all holding our breath. My mom eventually tried to break it by saying, well, at least we tried. But nobody responded. Johnny just kept his eyes on the road, and my sister put her headphones in. Here's where things get wild, though. Later that night, I overheard Johnny and my mom arguing in the kitchen. They weren't even trying to be quiet about it. Johnny was saying stuff like, "You can't keep pretending this is working." And my mom kept saying, "We just need more time." Then Johnny said, "It's been 5 years, Karen. They're never going to see us as their family." Hearing that hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't news or anything. I mean, I've known this whole time that we're not a real family, but hearing Johnny say it out loud like that made it feel final, like even he was starting to give up. But the conversation didn't stop there. My mom started crying and saying, "I just wanted them to have a father figure again. I wanted them to have someone to look out for them." Johnny said, "I'm not their father, Karen. I can't replace him. And they don't want me to." At that point, I had to walk away because it felt too personal, like I wasn't supposed to hear any of it, but it stuck with me. My mom wasn't just trying to force this blended family for herself. She really thought she was doing it for me and my sister. That doesn't make it any less frustrating, but it made me see her side a little more. A couple of days later, my stepsister came to my room again. She said she wanted to talk about the ropes course, but it quickly turned into something else. She told me she's been feeling like an outsider for years, not just with us, but with everyone. She said she barely remembers her mom and doesn't know what it's like to have a real family. That's when she dropped the twist I didn't see coming. She told me she's been thinking about trying to find her mom. She said she's scared, but she feels like she needs answers about why her mom left and why she hasn't been in her life. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell her not to do it, because what if her mom doesn't want to see her? But another part of me understood why she felt like she had to. I told her, "If you want to look for her, I'll help you." She looked surprised, like she didn't expect me to say that. She said, "Why would you do that? You don't even like me." I told her, "I don't hate you. I just don't know how to be what you need, but I can at least help you with this." I'm not sure where this is going to lead, but it feels like a turning point. Not for the whole family, but maybe for me and my stepsister. I still don't think we'll ever be close the way my mom and Johnny want us to be, but maybe that's okay. Maybe this is enough. Update 3. So after my stepsister told me she wanted to find her mom, things got kind of intense. I didn't tell my mom or Johnny about it because I knew they'd freak out. Johnny especially. He's never said it outright, but I think he's scared that if my stepsister ever reconnects with her mom, she'll leave him too. My stepsister and I started looking up everything we could. We didn't have much to go on, just her mom's name and the last city she was known to live in. We tried social media first, but there were way too many people with the same name. We looked through old records online and eventually we found something, a possible address from a few years ago. It wasn't much, but it was something. She got really quiet after we found it. I asked her if she was okay, and she said, "What if she doesn't want to see me?" I didn't know how to answer that, so I just told her, "If that happens, at least you'll know, and it's not your fault." She nodded, but I could tell she was still scared. Here's where things get wild. My mom somehow found out. I'm not sure how. Maybe my stepsister left her laptop open or something. But she came into my room one night looking furious. She said, "What are you two doing?" I played dumb, but she wasn't buying it. She said, "I know you're helping her look for her mom." I told her it wasn't a big deal, but she snapped, "It is a big deal. Do you have any idea how much this could hurt Johnny?" That's when I lost it. I said, "This isn't about Johnny. It's about her. She deserves to know where she comes from." My mom looked like I'd slapped her. She said, "We've worked so hard to build this family and you're just tearing it apart." I told her, "You're the one tearing it apart by trying to force something that isn't there. Maybe if you stopped pretending everything was perfect, we could actually figure things out." She didn't say anything after that, just left the room and slammed the door. The next morning, Johnny was in a mood. He wouldn't even look at me or my stepsister. My sister stayed out of it, which was probably smart, but the tension in the house was unbearable. Later that day, my stepsister came to me and said, "I think I want to stop looking." I asked her why, and she said, "I don't want to make things worse." That made me feel bad for her because she was putting everyone else's feelings above her own, but I didn't want to push her if she wasn't ready. I told her, "It's your decision, but if you ever change your mind, I'll still help you." She said, "Thanks," and that was the end of it. Or at least that's what I thought. A few weeks later, my stepsister came into my room holding a letter. She said, "This came in the mail for me." I asked her what it was, and she said, "I think it's from my mom." We opened it together. It was short, but it confirmed that it was from her mom. She said she'd been thinking about her a lot over the years and wanted to reconnect if my stepsister was open to it. She left a phone number and an email address. My stepsister started crying and I didn't know what to do, so I just sat with her. She decided to call her mom that night. I stayed with her for support, but I didn't listen to the whole conversation because I wanted to give her privacy. She was on the phone for a long time, and when she came back, she looked different, like a weight had been lifted off her. She told me, she wants to meet me. Here's where things got messy again. My stepsister told Johnny about the letter and the call. He didn't take it well. He said, "Why would you want to see her after what she did to us?" My stepsister said, "She didn't leave me, she left you, and I need to know why." That started a huge argument. Johnny kept saying it was a bad idea, that she was setting herself up to get hurt. My mom tried to back him up, but my stepsister wasn't having it. She said, "You don't get to decide this for me." I stayed out of it because, honestly, it wasn't my fight. But I was proud of her for standing up for herself. Eventually, Johnny calmed down, but things between him and my stepsister were never the same after that. She met her mom a few weeks later, and from what she told me, it went well. They're still getting to know each other, but she seems happier now, like she's finally found a piece of herself that was missing. As for the rest of us, things are still kind of a mess. My mom and Johnny are trying to act like everything's fine, but it's obvious that the cracks in this family are bigger than ever. My sister and I are just trying to keep our heads down and get through the rest of high school. If there's one good thing that came out of all this, it's that my stepsister and I are closer now. We're not super tight or anything, but we've got this understanding between us that wasn't there before. I don't know if we'll ever be the family my mom and Johnny wanted us to be, but maybe that's okay. Sometimes just being honest with each other is enough. And that's where things stand. It's not a perfect ending, but it's real. And that's all I've got.